Hi, I'm Evan from Double or Nothing, and today we're talking about Metroid Dread, the fifth mainline game in the Metroid series. And also the first mainline game since Metroid Fusion, which, by the way, came out in 2002. So remember that the next time a Kingdom Hearts fan mentions how long it took for them to get 3. It was developed by Mercury Steam, the same studio responsible for the 2017 remake of Metroid 2 called Samus Returns. If you aren't aware of the lore of Dread's development, the concept was originally conceived sometime in the early 2000s and was going to be for the DS, but it was eventually cancelled because of technological limitations. For the longest time it seemed like Metroid Dread was never going to happen, but then came Samus Returns. Nintendo specifically chose Mercury Steam to develop that remake because of their previous work on Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Samus Returns was so well received that Nintendo felt they could trust Mercury to develop the next game on the Switch, and thus Metroid Dread returned from the depths of development hell. The basic premise is that after Samus blew up the BSL research station and destroyed the X-Parasite, the Galactic Federation received a video transmission from the planet CDR showing that, surprise, the X-Parasite is still alive. Because if there's one thing Metroid has taught us time and time again, it's that nothing stays dead unless you're human. The Galactic Federation sent a team of 7 Emmy robots to track it down, but all communications with them died shortly after they landed on the planet. So, since Samus is the only person who's immune to the X, it's up to her to retrieve them. After landing on ZDR, Samus meets a hostile Chozo and attempts to fight him before being incapacitated because she can't go one mission without losing all her abilities. She wakes up in her new, glorious blue power suit and the game begins. Your goal is to simply navigate your way through ZDR up to the surface and get to your ship. As is the standard for Metroid, the locations you can explore at the start are extremely limited, with you only starting with a basic power beam, missiles, and the melee attack, a mechanic added in Samus Returns. But more pathways will open up as you obtain more items and abilities. While this game is less open-ended than earlier entries like Zero Mission and Super Metroid, it's also not as linear as Fusion. While you are technically directed from location to location by Adam, there's still plenty of room for exploration, backtracking, and most importantly, sequence breaking. Of course, no speedrunning tech in existence will make these loading screens any shorter. However, getting to the top is easier said than done. It turns out the Emmys have been compromised and are all out to get you. Even at full power, Samus has no way to destroy them, so all you can do is try to stay alive. But as the game progresses, you'll gain access to more ways to defeat them. If you can find a room with a central unit and defeat it, you'll temporarily get an arm cannon upgrade called the Omega Cannon, which fires a powerful energy capable of taking down the Emmys, as long as you can charge up the shot in time. Be warned that some Emmys are harder to defeat than others, as each one has a unique function that later becomes a new ability for the power suit. I found this light blue one in Gavaran to be especially annoying since you'll be frozen for several seconds if it sees you. Of course, you want to avoid being seen at all costs, but if you play your cards right, you can make it through without much trouble. Especially if you use the new Phantom Cloak ability, which turns you completely invisible at the cost of some of your Aeon, another returning feature from Samus Returns. If you run out of Aeon while using it, it starts to drain your life instead. This can lead to some tight spots where you kinda just have to make a run for it and hope it works out. Or if you're being chased down and need a quick getaway, you can use the flash shift to quickly move left or right up to 3 times, allowing you to bypass large gaps and shutter switches. If an Emmy does manage to grab you, your only hope of escape is to parry one of its attacks. You know, as long as you can press the button within the incredibly tight window of time. Some people say it's 3 frames, others say it's 8, but all say that you won't be hitting it consistently enough to rely on it. Odds are you'll rack up more deaths dealing with Emmys than when fighting most bosses unless you can use all your abilities effectively. What? I never said I did. Every area has a boss fight that usually involves making use of the abilities you've obtained. Something else they carried over from Samus Returns is that you can trigger certain cutscenes while fighting a boss by parrying the right attack. During these cutscenes, you're free to shoot as much as you want until it ends. This lets you get in a ton of damage while doing so with as much style as possible. They make every fight much more intense and cinematic without interrupting the flow. If Other M ruined Samus' character, then Dread saved it because she has officially cemented herself as one of the most badass video game characters of all time. One thing to keep in mind about Metroid is that it isn't exactly known for having complex plots, and honestly that might be for the best after what happened last time. Like all the other standard 2D Metroid games, the focus is all on the gameplay, so there aren't going to be any crazy plot twists or earth-shattering revelations.
Here's your Metroid DNA has caused you to become a Metroid. I was right to let you live during our first encounter. That one glimpse you showed told me everything.
Huh. Well, if there's one takeaway from this game, it's that now whenever someone calls Samus Metroid, they're technically right. But really, I was not expecting to feel this much hype at the end of a Metroid game. Everything about this just felt perfect to me. The fight, the difficulty, the payoff, seeing Samus absolutely obliterate everything in her path. It just feels like the ultimate culmination of everything you accomplished throughout the game. I think it's safe to say that the Metroid series is in good hands if Mercury Steam continues to work on it. And if you need any more proof, check this out. Pretty early on after the game launched, people were finding new exploits and sequence breaks and soon found a way to skip the encounter with the first Emmy. The only problem was, if you ever went back to that room after moving on to the next area, when the cutscene played, the Emmy wouldn't actually spawn, resulting in a soft lock since you can't leave without destroying it with the Omega Cannon. A lesser studio, Nintendo, would have removed the exploit so you couldn't skip the tutorial, but Mercury, the absolute chads they are, opted to patch it so the cutscene wouldn't trigger instead. There's something about turning a bug into a feature that makes me genuinely happy to see. So yeah, go play Metroid Dread. It's an amazing addition to the series and I can't wait to see more from this developer. And Metroid Prime 4 if that ever actually happens. Make Prime Trilogy, you cowards!